Today, I'm finally reviewing Freaky, the 2020 slasher film about Millie Kessler, a timid high schooler who is cornered by the legendary local serial killer straight from the 80s, the Blissfield Butcher.
Cue the creepy dude in the mask.
Who stabs her with an ancient Aztec ritual dagger, causing them to switch bodies like they're Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan, but with murder. To be honest, I'm pretty excited to be finally reviewing this movie. Slasher movies are probably my favorite subgenre of horror, and with the delay of Candyman and Halloween Kills, this was easily the most anticipated release of the year for me. That being said, first I'm going to review this movie as a slasher fan, and then get more broad towards the end about the movie as a whole. And at the end, I'm going to throw in what I think a movie like this could do for the slasher subgenre in general. So, as a fan of slasher movies, this movie did not disappoint me at all. I thought it was fucking great. I liked Happy Death Day, and to a lesser extent, even its sequel. The PG-13 rating was what Happy Death Day mainly suffered from for me, and I still enjoyed it. So this movie coming out with an R rating was really nice to hear, and my expectations for this one were met in full. For me personally, the important thing to nail in a slasher movie is the killer, the kills themselves, and the effects they use for those kills. The acting and plot only really need to be serviceable if those three things are nailed, and in my opinion, this movie did it. And to boot, it did have great acting and a plot. One kill in particular, and when you see the movie you'll know which one I mean, was batshit crazy. The rest were on par and paced out pretty nicely, so I never lost that I'm watching a slasher movie feeling in between all the teen comedy. With some exceptions, they were also pretty creative kills too, so that checks 2 of my 3 boxes. And with the last one being the killer, this movie's premise kind of turns that on its head a bit, and it could have went south if it wasn't done well, but it nailed that too. A lot of the second act focuses on the dichotomy of the killer and final girl switching places, pointing out the awkwardness of that situation. And when the Blissfield Butcher isn't stumbling over his limitations in his new body, Newton plays the psychopath role pretty well, and has to trade in brute strength and intimidation for wit and persuasion, which is the thing I think was the most important thing to get across with a premise like this. This movie also pays homage to several slasher movies all through the runtime, and is also done really well. It didn't once get a cringe reaction from me with them, so I was on board the whole way through. So, if you aren't a super nerdy weird slasher fan like me, will you enjoy this movie? I feel like overall the answer is still yes. Mainly because this is a horror comedy that doesn't take itself too seriously, which means you don't have to either. Silly things that someone might roll their eyes at normally in a slasher film fit right in, and are at times even poked fun at by the movie itself. This movie does have laughable moments. It does have shallow one-dimensional characters. The only one really fleshed out at all is Millie, and it does that thing where they expect you to believe this hot girl is actually being picked on and treated like an outcast in high school, even though she is hot and has a likable personality. But all of that stuff plays into the tongue-in-cheek nature of the movie, and the comedy mostly lands even for somebody like me who isn't exactly the target demographic. It has something for a younger audience with the teenage characters, and for somebody my age, well, I can watch Vince Vaughn stumble around as a teen girl in a 40-year-old man's body, which is very entertaining. And so yeah, highly recommend this movie whether you're a slasher fan or not. This movie will be fun either way. That is what a slasher movie should be, and this one pulls it off beautifully.
And now, Deep Thoughts.
Slasher movies in the past have always come in waves, specifically the early 80s and late 90s, and they always leaned on a theme when it happened. In the 80s, it was any and every holiday, and to a lesser extent, just any eventful moment in a teenager's life. Prom night, final exam, graduation day, and last but not least, of course, summer camp. In the 90s, it was actually the genre itself. The better slasher movies at the time either doubled down on the tropes established in the 80s, or dissected them to play with your expectations. So what I see Christopher Landon doing here is making slasher movie versions of old iconic movies, and the possibilities of that are endless. And we've had a drought in the slasher department lately, at least as far as big studios, not counting remakes. I kinda think it's a combination of studios knowing the broader audience picks them apart, and that it's easier to just make supernatural jump scare movies and remakes. But whatever the reason, at least in terms of big studios, we're due a boom anytime now. I don't know if anybody is catching on to this opportunity, but I feel like as somebody who would welcome that flood of big studio competition, all of these guys trying to make the best slasher movie with the current popular theme, like what happened in the 80s and 90s, and netted us icons like Jason, Freddy, Ghostface, and a whole catalog of low-key awesome movies to spend the rest of our lives watching and finding a new love for. This is the prime opportunity. And movies like this have come out here and there over the past few years. I know Better Watch Out got dangerously close to being the Home Alone version of this, and it came before Happy Death Day. Also Final Girls, which is basically the last action hero of slasher movies. You could even almost see Babysitter as something similar to this concept. It could have just been a John Hughes style coming of age tale all the way up until you realize the babysitter is a Satan worshipping cult leader. So these movies are popping up and are pretty well regarded. They hit a nice balance of having the fun, gratuitous, excessive qualities of the slasher movie, but with the leniency in plot and tropiness you can give to a comedy. Because like I said earlier, at least for me, the plot and acting only really need to be okay, i.e. not boring, to get me through a slasher movie. If the kills and the formulaic nature are there, I'm good. And again, the possibilities of this concept are endless. If it was done right, there are decades of old movies you could revisit. You could subvert expectations constantly, entertain slasher fans, and pull in fans of the source material and end up with a shitload of fun movies, some probably becoming classics. And hey, if not, maybe at least Christopher Landon will be able to spearhead this all by himself just over a longer period of time, which I would be fine with, because he definitely knows what he's doing. And I can see the arguments against it, because it probably would generate a lot of bad movies in the process too. But the heart wants what it wants, and mine will always look for a way to get more slasher movies made. Let me know if you agree in the comments. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing, and until next time.